Good morning. Welcome to Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization meeting for Tuesday, September 3rd. Let us stand, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Steph, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Myers?
Here.
Mayor Ross, he's running late. Commissioner Miller?
Same, she's running late.
Commissioner Wastel?
Here.
Commissioner Cohen? Here. Commissioner Kemp? Councilmember Clendenin?
Here.
Councilmember Hurtak is excused. Councilmember Maniscalco?
Here.
Mayor Kilton?
Here.
Board Member Rendon?
Here.
Charles Klug?
Here.
Gina Dew? Greg Slater? The Hart seat is vacant, does not count towards quorum. And Planning Commissioner Joseph. We do have an in-person quorum.
Thank you so much. And I was informed we have no public comments. Is that correct, Johnny? No public comments?
Yes, Commissioner, no public comments this
Okay.
morning.
We're going to change the agenda around just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and move into our executive well, let's have a motion I need to move the agenda. Mayor Ross would like to be here when we discuss small cities, and he's stuck in traffic. And so I'm going to move to the executive director to give him time enough to get here for 2 key reports. To be properly moved in second to accept the change into the agenda. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposes? That motion is carried. We can hear from the executive director at this time.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, board members. I have a very quick report for you. The next TPO regular meeting will be next Wednesday, September the 11th, same location, same time as usual. The Transportation Management Area Leadership Group meeting will be September 20th, and the location will be at the City of Oldsmar in Pinellas County, Old City Hall. In addition to these 2 items on the director's report, I want to let you know that downtown will be abuzz this week. The Florida Planning Conference is going to be hosted at the Tampa Convention Center beginning today and extending through Friday. TPO staff will be attending a number of sessions, either as panelists or presenters. So if you have time, I'd encourage you to swing by and check out some of the planning work that's being discussed. And then beginning tomorrow through Friday, the Florida AV Summit will be hosted at the Waterside Marriott, I believe. And for more details about that, I know Greg Slater is involved, so I encourage you to get with him. And that's all from me. Thank you, board.
Greg, would you like to say something?
Just want to give it a little bit more detail on that. So we are Wednesday through Friday. It's the Florida Autonomous Vehicle Summit. It's hosted this year by THEA as well as the Florida Policy Project. Florida Policy Project is a nonprofit organization that is led by former Senator Jeff Brandes, and he really has kind of taken on affordable housing as well as transportation and insurance as some key issues. So a lot of intersection of key issues being discussed, and a lot of really new technology from autonomous vehicles coming to Tampa all week.
Okay. Thank you. Staff, did you get Commissioner Miller? Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to move right into our status report. Sarah, start with Sarah Capers. Good morning.
Good morning, board members. Sarah Caper, TPO staff. This morning, I'm going to be speaking with you and getting your feedback on the scope of services for the regional MPO support activities. The Florida Department of Transportation is providing $500,000 in federal funding to assess the structure, logistics, and needs to create a regional MPO. The Hillsborough TPO would receive the funds and manage the project, and we would work closely with Forward Pinellas and the Pasco MPO. In order to do this effort, we would require a specialized consultant or consultant team with management and legal expertise and with a strong understanding of state and federal law regarding MPOs and MPOs' work in practice. This morning, we are taking this item to you for feedback before the September 20th TMA Leadership Group meeting, because at that meeting, there will be a discussion of the draft. And then later, we anticipate action on the actual scope of services in December at the TMA Leadership Group meeting. And following that action, we would conduct a procurement effort to select a consultant or consultant team. The current scope of services was included in your agenda packet. It includes ways for feedback from a range of stakeholders, including a project management team with regional and advocacy organizations, such as Chambers of Commerce, the Tampa Bay Partnership, tourism partners, technical advice, and also representatives from each Citizens Advisory Committee. And the intent of this is to include a range of diverse partners. There would be meetings with MPO staff and presentations to the TMA Leadership Group and other public agencies. The scope has been developed with a target date of a draft memorandum of understanding and other associated agreements that will be required for the creation of a merged MPO by July 2027. Included in the scope are several deliverables, and these are a draft preferred apportionment plan, the MOU itself, other required agreements, multiple drafts of and organizational structure evaluations, so looking at how would this MPO be set up and different alternatives, an organizational alternatives report that also include costs, an organizational chart and personnel information, final agency cost details, a hosting agreement if applicable, and also internal policies and procedures. One thing that would be included is how to reach agreement on a regional MPO might be governed and operated. There would be a subsequent step not included in the scope of services to address required planning documents and certification. The intent of this scope of work is to complete these organizational steps in 2026 to produce the next step of required documents by 2027. We are seeking your feedback this morning on the scope of services and the procurement process in advance of the September TMA meeting. Some areas to consider are if you have input on the phasing of the scope, such as if you want the first phase being the preferred apportionment plan, or if you have specific agencies or organizations you'd like mentioned in the scope of services, or related to the project management team, so we can take note of that as we develop the outreach plan and think about who will be reaching out as this progresses. Finally, in order to receive the funding, you will see a revision coming later this year to the Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, and to the Transportation Improvement Program, TIP, to account for the funding that the Hillsborough TPO will receive for this effort. These amendments or modifications would be specific to the Hillsborough TPO, since we would be receiving the funding directly from FDOT. I'm happy to take any questions or comments you have at this time.
Okay, any questions? She needs some directions. Mayor Kilton?
Just walk me through the potential phases and the timeline again, please.
Sure. So right now, the scope of services does not specifically identify phases. We do have the timeline of reaching an agreement in principle on if and how to merge the MPOs by March 30th, 2026. After that time, if there is a decision to proceed, there would be a separate work effort to develop planning materials, such as a regional unified planning work program or other required MPO documents. And the exact schedule and deliverables would be developed in conjunction with a consultant who is selected to proceed with this effort.
Any other questions? Anyone? Johnny?
Well, thank you for your feedback. What Sarah was saying, I think, provides a very high-level overview, although the specific timeline is dependent upon whether or not we can reach an agreement with Pinellas and Pasco in principle. And so what we envision is procuring the consultant team, Well, issuing the procurement around January of 2025, because this is a little bit unique and the skill set that we're looking for in the consultant team is somewhat niche, we're envisioning that we would kick that work off maybe late spring, early summer 2025, and it'll take about a year to finalize the draft conceptual apportionment plan. So basically figuring out how do we assign the voting seats to the board. We're working through many of these issues already, but getting a second look from an outside consultant to make sure that we've crossed the T's and dotted the I's would be helpful. If we have, and if the BOCCs in the city of Tampa agree in principle to moving this forward, that could happen as early as March 2026. And then once that process is in motion, the next step would be creating or aggregating the TIPs, the LRTPs, the work programs of Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough MPOs. So at a high level, that's what we're faced with. But again, those dates are subject to the timelines of Pasco and Pinellas as well.
Mayor Kilton?
Does it make sense to bifurcate the contract? Because everything's kind of a moot point if we don't get to an agreement on whether or not we're going to move forward. So do we have a portion of it that's just assigned to that first step and versus, you know, the entire scope in a certain dollar amount around step one, and then assuming we come to an agreement, then we move forward with step two?
We can certainly work to incorporate that in the scope of services and allow for the phasing so that we reach certain milestones before we proceed with other ones.
That'll make sense to me.
Okay, Commissioner Wooster?
Is this going to be presented at the TMA meeting that's on the 20th?
Yeah, on the 20th, we'll, yes, Commissioner, sorry. On the 20th, we'll give another high-level overview and basically a homework assignment to those TMA members similar to us. We're receiving the feedback now. We'll bring it back several months later to see a final version of it. So with the comments that we received from you all today, Pasco and Pinellas will be following the same process. If their boards have any comments, we'll make those edits, present them to you again later this year, and then seek to finalize this in December.
The reason I asked, wasn't right before he stepped down, was Commissioner Owen on the TMA? Didn't he step into that? He was not?
No, Commissioner. It was,
Okay, good.
the TMA members are Mayor Ross, Commissioner Kemp, and Councilman Hurtak.
Good, all right, thank you.
Okay, Councilman Clendon?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of echo the sentiment that the mayor spoke about minimizing the cost and expenses. Because I still continue to feel, I'll go on a record, is that we're trying to push a square peg into a round hole on a lot of this discussion, that there's, you know, while there's a lot of discussion, I think the chances of us successfully pulling this off is not great. And that we're going to, in typical government fashion, we're going to study things and we're going to spend a lot of money and spend a lot of energy and spend a lot of other people's money trying to accomplish something that's not going to be accomplished. So I think we should make sure that we don't spend a lot of taxpayer money on the front end of this project out of due caution that it's not going to produce the results that maybe a handful of people are looking for.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Okay, so what directions we want to give? We want to just accept the report.
Members, what I've captured is that there's a desire to phase the contract so that we focus first on drafting a conceptual apportionment plan leading toward a decision. If that decision is to move forward, then phase two would get kicked in.
Is that,
I'll move to receive the report.
can we have a motion and a second to receive the report? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposes? That motion is carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Is anyone going to introduce online? Okay.
That's the other one. Board members, for the record in the minutes, Johnny Wong, your staff director. Over the past few months, we've discussed rail in many forms and the importance that it can play for Hillsborough County and the greater region. I've tried to keep you up to date on my many efforts to get in contact with representatives of Brightline, CSX, brought you a presentation on Amtrak. I would like to introduce you today to Bob O'Malley, who has held executive positions at both Brightline and CSX previously. He is well regarded in the industry as an expert on rail, particularly across Central Florida. And I've invited him to give a high-level overview of some of the rail initiatives that are happening in the state and specifically in this region, and then give you all the opportunity to ask questions of him. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Bob O'Malley.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's see if we can get this presentation up. There we go. So good morning, board members. In addition to having worked for CSX and in Brightline, early in my career I worked for Metroplan Orlando. So I'm very familiar with and I have an appreciation for the important work that you do as an MPO here in Hillsborough County. So when Johnny asked me to come speak to you to give that high-level overview of both freight and passenger rail issues in the region, I was eager to do so because there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of opportunity here. But I also know that you have a lot of questions. So my presentation is very, like he said, a high-level overview. But the final slide, I do want to leave time for questions. And the final slide has my contact info. So if we don't get to questions, please feel free to give me a call anytime. I still field a surprising amount of calls related to both CSX and Brightline, and always happy to take those calls. So feel free to call me anytime if you don't think of the questions today. But like I said, I will leave time to answer those questions. So I'm going to talk about freight and passenger rail. And just to disclose, Johnny mentioned I used to work for CSX, used to work for Brightline. In the past, I've done some work as a consultant for Amtrak. I'm not doing work for them right now. And I'm currently doing some work for Sunrail, and I have that up there even though it's not in Tampa because some of what's going on in Central Florida does have a bearing on passenger rail here in the Tampa Bay region. So I'll hit on each of these topics. So starting first with Amtrak, I know you're familiar with the FRA long-range study. And this board passed or sent a letter to FRA Administrator Amit Bose expressing your concern that the FRA long-distance study for Amtrak bypassed Tampa. So they're looking to expand passenger rail or intercity rail throughout the country, but this particular study, the connection from Chicago to Miami did not include a stop in Tampa, and this board did send that letter. Congresswoman Castor sent a letter as well, so I know FRA heard you, and they noted as much in their follow-up report. This is still something to keep an eye on, still something to be concerned about. Amtrak does serve Tampa. It is an important transportation asset to this region, and there's opportunities with Amtrak as well, beyond just the long-distance service. If you look to states like North Carolina and Virginia and other states, they have strong state-supported rail networks. So, you know, you could at some point in the future look to have a Tampa to Orlando, Jacksonville, increased service between those Florida cities on Amtrak if you wanted to look partner up with Amtrak as a state-supported service. But in the meantime, it's important to keep an eye on this study, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in November if there's a change, you know, with the new president, new administration, whether or not passenger rail will be a priority for the next administration. But still, this is something to keep an eye on and to continue to make your voice heard and let them know that you don't want to see Tampa bypassed on any increase or any expanded service into Florida. Next up is Brightline, and I know a lot of you are well aware of Brightline. Right now, Brightline currently operates from Miami to Orlando. They opened up the Orlando service about a year ago, and they have plans to extend to Tampa at some point in the future. Right now, they're pretty busy with in addition to their Florida service, they're developing a system between Las Vegas and Southern California So they've received an FRA grant, $3 billion grant for that out west, and they've received some tax-exempt bond allocations for it as well. So they've broken ground on that project. They're aiming to get it complete by the 2028 Olympics in Los Angeles. I think that's extremely ambitious, but that is where a lot of their bandwidth is focused. So I think, as far as Tampa, they're probably a decade away from service to Tampa, and I'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide of things that need to happen before they get to Tampa. But that doesn't mean that nothing's happening. There are some important things happening, but all of those things need to happen first before they got to Tampa. So which brings me to Orlando and Sunrail. So I am working on this project. In addition to this particular project, there's also work on I-4. The governor about a month ago in Polk County announced the Moving Florida Forward plan, which is to expand I-4 between US 27 and State Road 417 and extend the express toll lanes to US 27. That's going to consume I-4 and that portion of I-4 as far as construction before Brightline could really get into the corridor to do anything. And even before that happens, Brightline or Central Florida, currently they operate into the Orlando International Airport Terminal C, or next to Terminal C. That's where their station is. And in order to get to Tampa, right now there's consensus in Central Florida on what is called the Sunshine Corridor. And this is an extension of passenger rail from Orlando's airport to the existing north-south Sunrail line, to the convention center, and then onto the I-4 corridor down toward the Disney area. And then from there, Brightline could pick it up and take it to Tampa. But this is a shared corridor that can be used by both Sunrail and Brightline. It's envisioned to be used by both Sunrail and Brightline, and that's in the works right now. I bring this up because before Brightline can get to Tampa, this needs to happen first. That's how Brightline is getting into the I-4 corridor. So that's something to keep an eye on. Nothing you really need to do, just to be other than just be aware of what's going on in the Orlando area. That's going to coincide with some of the work that's already started on the I-4 corridor, and hopefully when all of that falls into place, the I-4 corridor will be free for, or will be open for Brightline to extend to Tampa. It's important to mention that in the governor's announcement about the Moving Florida Forward plan, he did mention that Florida DOT is going to preserve that enough right-of-way for intercity passenger rail to Tampa. So that was a very positive announcement, and it's important whether Brightline does it or some other company in the future does it. It's important that that's one thing that you continue to make a priority, that rail envelope in the I-4 corridor is preserved. I know the Suncoast Transportation Planning Alliance and the Central Florida MPO Alliance a couple of months ago passed a joint resolution saying as much. So it's important that you continue to keep that as a policy priority. If in order to make intercity passenger rail on the I-4 corridor, possible in the future. That's obviously in addition to the intercity passenger rail that already exists with Amtrak. So then, beyond passenger rail, or actually, I guess, related to passenger rail too, because CSX definitely has a bearing on passenger rail, but I did want to talk a lot about CSX and then leave room for questions related to CSX or Brightline or anything else. But CSX, as you all know, operates in the Tampa area. They serve Port Tampa Bay, and then they have the main line traffic coming into Tampa, and then from here down south to Port Manatee. This is their 25 state now network that connects Tampa businesses to the rest of the East Coast, and then in connections with the Western railroads to all of North America. So it is an important freight asset to this region. It connects the port to other markets, which is important for port growth. From an economic development standpoint, as you're looking to, as companies are looking to locate industrial businesses, a lot of them, that require rail-served properties are going to look all along this network for rail-served properties. So it's important to stay in touch with CSX from an industrial development standpoint. And then obviously they're important from a traffic congestion standpoint because they remove trucks from the highway. So all of that is important, and I start with the freight part first because that is what they are. And you know, I know there's been interest in talking with CSX about passenger rail, but it's important to always keep in mind and to approach them from the standpoint that freight is their business, and that's always going to be what drives the day for them. So as you look to passenger rail programs, they're going to be concerned about things like capacity, liability, safety, and you need to have all of that in mind with whatever plans that you approach them with. And I know some of those plans involve, you've looked in the past on having regional rail on their Brooksville and their Clearwater subdivisions. In fact, I think I presented to the TMA 9 years ago in this month, about CSX. I was with CSX at the time, and what was and what wasn't possible from a passenger rail standpoint. A lot of that is still true, but not necessarily all of it. So I'll say that. That was 9 years ago. It was 3 CEOs ago. So there has been some change within the company. Some of those core principles still remain, but there may be some room to have a discussion with them. They're also going to be important from a streetcar expansion standpoint. So as you look to expand the streetcar, where they do cross the CSX tracks down in downtown, there's going to be some coordination that takes place with them. And then I know there's other projects. The Expressway Authority has had some involvement with CSX and some coordination that is necessary. So if I can ever help you out or help introduce you to the right people, I know I've done that with some of you already, but please don't hesitate to give me a call anytime if you need that, because coordinating with them is important, and sometimes it can be a dead end if you know they have certain rights that they will use. There's that. And again, safety, liability, capacity, compensation, those are their 4 guiding principles when it comes to using their corridor, whether it's for passenger rail or anything. They also use their corridor for pipeline and underground utility and all kinds of things. But liability, safety, capacity, and compensation are those 4 key principles that guide everything they do. So as you move forward with them, keep that in mind. And then as promised, wanted to leave some time for questions, specific questions about either freight or passenger rail, any of those railroads that I talked about. And again, here's my contact information. It's public record now, so that's my cell phone number. It's been my cell phone number since my MetroPlan days, so feel free to give me a call anytime. So, Commissioner?
Thank you so much for the overview. Councilman Maniscalco.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and it highlights, the importance of rail in general. And I look at it from a historic perspective, because if you didn't have Henry Plant or Henry Flagler here in Florida, I don't think you would have seen the development of Florida even as it is today. It's all about the movement of people, of goods. Historically, rail is what worked, and then you had the introduction of automobiles and then the highways. Times have changed, but at the same time, with that growth, we complain about traffic congestion. We talk about having different options of getting around. The train takes a little longer than having the freedom of the car or taking an airplane, but at the same time, it gives us different options. Again, we had a robust streetcar system in Tampa that was pulled up in favor of a bus service. The bus service, then you had the advent of the automobile post-World War II with the interstate and the freedom of movement. But with the growth that we see, especially in our region here in Tampa, there's congestion everywhere. Some members are late today because they were stuck in traffic. We have to look at the different options. We talk about different topics as Tampa grows, like housing and affordability. We need to talk about transportation and the movement of people. I had a meeting before here with a gentleman, and he lives down here in the Channel area. And he said, a lot of people I know don't have cars because they either rely on walking within this downtown core area, taking the streetcar from Ybor to downtown as it is now, or they Uber if they need to get farther away. you know, like the airport or International Plaza, whatever it is. But I think, you know, investing in rail, looking at different options, I don't want to say we're going to become like Europe. If you look at the European rail map, it's very dense. You can get you can get anywhere you want with a train for the most part, because I've used it many times. My grandmother lives in Sicily, an island. She lives in the middle of the island, 2.5 hours away from the airport. But I can get off at the airport, take a train to the bus station, and that bus for the equivalent of less than $10, I can get to the main street of my grandmother's town, which is as big as Ybor City. It's very tiny on that, but there's a connection there where I don't have to rent a car. I don't have to look at somebody having to pick me up and drive those 5 hours round trip, essentially. But I think here in the United States, we need to look at investing in our commuter and passenger rail. We see the benefits in the rest of the world. I mean, look at Japan. They have their high-speed bullet trains. I'm not saying we need to go that advanced, which we should look at that, but I think people will use it. You know, I mean, you have a stop, Brightline goes Miami to Orlando, and then we talk about it coming to Tampa. But you had mentioned there's no Tampa to Chicago route. There's a Miami to Chicago, correct?
There's Amtrak right now, but it's one train a day. So
okay, but I know you can get from Tampa to New York City in a 24-hour period, I think. I mean, at least you can go to that major hub. What about across the country? If I wanted to go Tampa to California, I would have to change trains. There's no direct train, but
yes.
There's the option. I think if we invest further into rail, you know, people will use it. And I'll close with, you know, talk about folks from the 1950s and 60s that saw the interstate system being built. When it was first built and the roads were, that highway was open, one gentleman told me, you know, nobody was using the highway system. It was new. But as Tampa has grown, everybody's on that interstate. And everybody wants that freedom of movement. I think if we invest in rail, people will see it, see the convenience of it, be open to it, maybe my generation, younger generations, and I think we'll see it as being more successful. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Kemp?
Yes, I want to thank you as always for the great presentations and deep knowledge. Just a couple things. So I know it's going to be a while before the connection is made in Orlando. That has to be made first, as is noted, to ever get any rail through Brightline from Orlando to Tampa. So in the best scenario, because you talked about that connection and also the I-4 construction, in the best possible world, when might that be ready to start?
So you're asking my opinion and
Yes.
my guess.
Sorry, I'm just.
No, it's okay. Yeah. It's okay. So my guess, in my opinion, and my guess is you're probably a decade away.
Right. That's what.
But with that said, there's still things that you can be doing now, and there's still things that you should be doing and that you actually are already doing, whether intercity rail ever comes here or not, right? So extending the streetcar, improving bicycle and pedestrian connectivity in not just the downtown area, but across the county. All of those things are important so that when you do have intercity rail at some point in the future, or in addition to the Amtrak service that you already have, that the passengers that get off those trains have a way to get to their final destination. So you are already doing some of those things, and I encourage you to continue to do that, again, regardless of the timeline for when those systems are going to come here.
Right. And then in the meantime, and I know that you talked about this somewhat in the Amtrak, but right now, it seems like somewhat of a secret, but I understand why. But some people use it a lot, and that's once a day. Amtrak goes from Tampa to Orlando, and from there you can get around in Winter Park and Sunrail and make connections that way. So and I know you touched somewhat on that, but it's only once a day, and it's a huge barrier when you can go over there, but if your 2 hours doesn't fit in, you can't get back doing that. It's not a practical use for anything but a trip that has a lot of time or a lot of availability for you to make it. So do you see possibility within the next 10 years of increasing the number of trips on Amtrak between Tampa and Orlando? That also, and I appreciate everything you said about connectivity and making this area more possible. Do you see that as a possible scenario?
Yes, I do. And Commissioner, you're right. It is used. It is popular. It does serve, downtown Kissimmee, downtown Orlando, Winter Park. So there is the one train a day that does serve the Orlando and back. So that is available. It took me 2 hours to get here from Orlando, and it was stressful. I know people that have taken that train from here to Orlando, and they said it's very relaxing. And you have, regardless of the time, even if you get there in the same amount of time, you're not stressed out, and you can actually be productive on the train too. So you can work, you can read, you can do all kinds of things. So I think there is, as I mentioned, in other states they do work with Amtrak to increase service within the state on existing rail lines. That is possible, but as with everything related to transportation, it comes down to funding. So, but obviously there's a need for it. The state is growing. I grew up in Florida, and it's crazy how much Tampa and Orlando are almost like one big city. And the need for investment on I-4, state is already making significant highway investments, and that's great news. But there's also a need for other types of trips between the two markets, and increased Amtrak service could be one of those.
And so that would be something that maybe this group could request somehow of the state, or something like that, you're saying, because other states do this. So that would be maybe a possible way to go. And then the final question I have is just about freight, because it is crazy how much freight we're doing by truck and on our highways that are just adding again to the congestion and the danger, actually, with all this freight going on our highways. So do you see an increased role I know some of our freight here, as I understand, has diminished quite a bit because of the lesser need for moving phosphate rock in its unprocessed form, as well as less of it, which was one of the big things that drove our railway locally, from what I understand, in terms of freight. But do you see that more and more freight here and around the country will be starting to be moved on railway as a future goal, or a future way of moving?
I hope so, and I think it's beneficial to everybody to have more freight moved by train. The freight railroads around the country, including CSX, went through a period a few years back where they focused on profitable commodities and profitable routes, and really were cutting service more than anything. And I see there's now a return to focusing on growth, and hopefully that will translate to more growth in the Florida area for different commodities. You mentioned phosphate, but they also move other critical commodities, rock, especially with all the roads we're building. Sometimes road projects have been held up by the delay in getting rock and aggregate into the state. So I'm hopeful for that. Chlorine and other chemicals that are needed just for, we use chlorine for our water supply, so we need that. And then intermodal is always the big one that kind of seems like there's a lot of focus on growing intermodal, and then less focus depending on where they are. I think that's important because one intermodal train can move the equivalent of 280 trucks. So I think
wow.
If we could see more intermodal into and out of the Tampa area by train, then that's good for traffic congestion on the area's highways.
And just to be, and this will be fast, but you can move freight and passengers on the same rails They do that, I understand, in Orlando at the Sunrail, that's possible, just probably not at the same time usually.
That's correct. You can share the corridor. There's a number of things that need to be in place. Again, going back to, CSX always views it through the lens of, safety, liability, capacity, and compensation. So they do that in the Orlando area, as you mentioned. There's some temporal separation between, there's windows of time when it's freight only, there's windows of time when it's passenger only, but there are some windows of time when both freight and passenger use the same corridor, and that just takes coordination and dispatch to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Clendon?
Yes, thank you for being here today. It's been a hot topic of conversation amongst this group and others in the Tampa area, but specifically, based on your experience and your background, we have a spur of CSX that basically goes from downtown to Port City, Tampa. From my understanding, that the last user has been sold, and so that spur will no longer be utilized. Based on your experience, what actions should this group and other groups be taking to be poised to take advantage of that and possibly, take possession of that corridor? Because it's a good segue into your discussion as far as the services within the city to be able to connect to these rail systems that you're discussing. It's an important area, a corridor in a densely populated area. It's a great green spine potential along with transportation. And so I want to make sure that we're ready if CSX is in fact no longer going to use that spur. How do we take advantage of that opportunity?
I think where you should, and I know they've said as much to you, I think first you need to come up with, a plan, and it doesn't need to be a very detailed plan, but high level, of their assets, what would you like to use for passenger rail? So I showed you with Sunrail, and it helped that we had a congressman at the time who was the chair of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, and that made all the difference in the world. But I think you need to reach consensus as a region, or I should say, even just within Hillsborough County is fine. It doesn't necessarily need to be as a region, but you need consensus within this group, but also consensus kind of local, state, and federal representation. And you need to have all three of those. Orlando, Central Florida was successful with Sunrail because, as I mentioned, they had a T&I chairman in Congress. They also had state legislators that were very supportive and actively engaged in advocating for it. And then they had consensus at the local level. So I think deciding what you want, and if all you want is that point A, that Port Tampa lead from South Tampa to kind of the downtown area, then that's one thing. But if you're looking for more than that, or if you're looking to get up to USF or wherever, I think settling on what that looks like first. Again, you don't need to get into heavy studies on it, but just at least conceptual idea of what you're looking for.
So how long would CSX sit on a corridor unutilized before their usage is in jeopardy? Can they, in perpetuity?
It can be. I don't think they stop using it. If anything, they could just go park trains on it and say they're using it for storage. So the idea that they're just going to say, we're done with this, you guys can have it, I don't see that happening. The value is way too high. Even from their standpoint, that line touches water. It could be beneficial to the right customer at some point in the future. I don't know what that customer looks like, but even from a future industrial development standpoint or a future growth opportunity, it has value to them. And they know it has value to you. So I don't see them just walking away from that. And even then, the process of abandonment can take time, and there might be a short line that wants to jump in and take over that line. So I don't think it's a situation where that would be immediately available, especially for free. I mean, I think that needs to be part of a broader there's no easy way to deal with CSX. So if you're looking for the easy, quick way,
That seems to be the answer
Right.
we get all the time when CSX acronym is thrown into the atmosphere.
But I mean, I think you really need to decide first, do the hard work first. What do you want, at least conceptually, and then go from there.
Yeah, my biggest concern, which I think you just answered, was there's really no problem. I was worried that we'd miss a window of opportunity. You're saying that the window of opportunity doesn't exist, so just, you have to pry that window open, so, okay, very.
Right, I mean, what else is it gonna be used for, right? I mean, maybe the city will take it and make it a bike trail, I don't know. But it's not like somebody's gonna come in and it's not like a piece of property that, you know, if you don't take it while it's available, somebody else might.
Well, I just keep hearing that the CSX administration is more amicable to these types of discussions today than maybe under previous leadership groups. That may, you know, that there was a tide shift possibly, and take advantage of that shift.
So when I gave the presentation at TMA in 2015, I think it was, they were less amicable than they probably are today, if
Right.
that's,
Okay, thank you.
if I can wiggle out of your question that way.
That's a good wiggle.
Thank you. Commissioner Worcester?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Malley. I'm gonna still man your argument a little bit, okay? Just from the position of, especially since it's the first time I think in 21 months the media has ever been to a TPO meeting. So I want to make sure people get a fair shake, all right? Is that fair?
That's fair.
You're a public affairs guy. You run a public affairs business. Your company is called Right Track. You work directly for the railroad company. So you're paid to incentivize and grow their image to the public. Is that fair of what you might do as a public affairs?
To be clear, I don't, Right Track's kind of a play on words, so I represent more than just railroads, but I do not work for CSX, so.
But you work for Brightline.
I do not work for Brightline, no. I used to work for Brightline as an employee, but I do not work for Brightline right now.
But you're working the Orlando project, you said.
Yes, I am.
So you're consulting on that
I
project to
am
promote
consulting.
rail in that area?
Yes, and
Okay.
a theme park of all things is my client in that regard, so it's not even a railroad.
Okay. My questions are, and this is nothing against any one organization, I'm kind of agnostic about the train. Look, trains used to be the most accessible, affordable form of transportation there was. The private industry left that for a reason. The private industry is trying to get back into it, but with really, really steep government subsidies. Probably, arguably, the most subsidized form of public transportation that there is. So, my question is more of a quantitative, not a qualitative. Because we go on a qualitative road, unfortunately, sadly, rest in peace, 10 hours ago, it was just reported on the Chicago CTA Blue Line, 4 individuals were shot while they were sleeping on the train. So that immediate perception, unfortunately, today is the day you're coming, and that was just reported this morning on all media stations. That's a sad reality of that. Some of those public transit options can become quite dangerous and unsafe for ridership. In the first quarter of 2024, Brightline, the organization that wants to come here, have nothing against them. I support private industry coming here. If it works, it works with no government subsidies possible, the least amount favorably. They reported that they lost $116 million in quarter 1 of 2024. I've been looking to see quarter 2. It's not reported yet. So my concern is that if we sign, you said that there is a monetary aspect, of course, because CSX is never going to get rid of their lines, more than likely. They're just going to lease the use. Is that the realistic outcome?
They could potentially lease, or in Central Florida, they sold the lines, and then they lease their use back. So they pay the state to use the line now, because they sold it.
My concern then is if those 9-figure losses are something that is a reality that might persist, if contracts are signed and put in place, and government likes to sign very long, multi-decade contracts that are usually much more disadvantaged to themselves, but more importantly, to the taxpayers that have to pay the bill if something goes wrong. We have one of those in Hillsborough County that's 30 years old, and we have 20 more years to go on it. My concern is if quantitatively, has there been an analysis that if those losses continue to exist, will the taxpayers of Hillsborough County ultimately be accountable to subsidize that business? And if we say no, they just say, well, we're a private business, we're gone, and you still have this heavy burden on your books.
So again, I'm not here to advocate for Brightline. I'm here just to give some information. But probably the best way to answer your question is to look at Orlando to Miami, where it's already existing. If they closed up shop tomorrow, those tracks are there. It's not anybody, the burden falls on the bondholders that help finance that system. There's no responsibility to the city of Orlando or any governments in Central Florida or Florida DOT for that matter to continue on with that service. They don't own the tracks. They don't own the service. It's a privately owned, privately operated service. So if, again, like I said, if they closed up shop tomorrow, that's the end of the service. Now, that doesn't mean that should another private entity or a public entity decide then to pick up that service, that option's always there, but the responsibility is not.
But the initial ask from Brightline was $50 million from the state that they were going to use for several hundred million from the Fed. So while they might not own the bond, the taxpayers are out those several $100 million that they were advocating for the preservation of that corridor. Hillsborough County taxpayers would be out any money that we dedicate to infrastructure improvements to bring them into the area. Is that not true? Even though we're not responsible for the bond, we've still invested tons of other money potentially into infrastructure that's now going to rot away unless we bend the knee to another service provider to come in that might ask for even more subsidies to do business in the area.
So my understanding of that ask was it was for infrastructure improvements related to the expansion of I-4 in District 1 and District 5, so, which are happening anyways, and as the governor mentioned, the rail envelope between Orlando and Tampa would be preserved. So that rail envelope is still there for future use, whether by Brightline or some other entity. So as far as I know, if that $50 million was not approved by the legislature, so it's I don't want to say a moot point, but it was never approved, so it was never spent.
Well, moot today, but possibly not moot in 2 years, as we're talking about as a long form. But I guess the reality is, since I'm not getting an answer, is that if we invested a lot of money into making this a reality, which it would take, is that if the provider decided to pull out, yes, they might have responsibilities, but all of the other local investments that we've made are left there to rot unless we find another service provider that might ask for even more subsidies than we granted in the first place. And I think that that's a bullet that the taxpayers can't dodge. And if that study hasn't been provided, then that's fine, but I think that that's a reality that we need to consider. But I do appreciate your time and coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief because I know we have another discussion we need to move on to. But thank you, Mr. O'Malley, for your presentation. Very informative, and I really appreciate you being here to do that for us. My quick question is this. You mentioned Orlando having commuter rail on CSX tracks. How common is that arrangement, and do you know of other communities on the CSX network that have been successful in? We're trying to get a sense, is Orlando an outlier, or is that done all over the place?
So the Sunrail corridor, 61 miles, was actually patterned after what's down in South Florida. So in Tri-Rail, 85 miles, I think, if I'm correct, between the 3 counties in South Florida, was purchased by the state from CSX for the implementation of and use of Tri-Rail. So it's used down in South Florida. It's used in the Central Florida, a 4-county area, 61 miles, as I mentioned, was purchased. Virginia just recently, past year or two, announced an agreement with CSX to do a similar type of arrangement. Norfolk Southern in Virginia also did the same thing. So there is precedent for this in other communities around the country, but even here in Florida, where that type of arrangement is made to acquire a corridor. And the acquisition is important for a number of reasons. One is by acquiring it from CSX, then the state or the locals they control the corridor. So they're not beholden to CSX. A lot of the problems with Amtrak is they have to operate across CSX territory, and they're really at the mercy of CSX dispatch. But in Central Florida and in South Florida, where the state or a local entity controls the corridor, it's the other way around. CSX is beholden to them as far as from a dispatch standpoint. The other thing that owning the corridor does is it gives investment a certainty that that corridor will be there, and it was publicly owned. If you look at Sunrail, for example, there's been over $2 billion of transportation-oriented development along the corridor next to the stations that has happened since Sunrail was implemented. So quite a bit of positive impact on the tax base of those counties because of the investment that's taken place around the stations. And that can take place because those property owners have certainty that that system is publicly owned and will continue to be publicly owned, and it's not owned by some private company that can just leave.
Thank you. Secretary Gwynn.
Yeah, just real quick. I know a lot of the board members today were not here last time we had discussions with CSX and went down the route of trying to look, and I'm speaking specifically to commuter rail or some sort of passenger rail along the CSX lines. But there were a number of things that we were basically told we would have to do before it would even be considered as something to look at. First and foremost, they more or less, and I'll paraphrase it, but they said, unless you have a plan, which includes a financial commitment to put the local match and the operations and maintenance funding, then we're kind of wasting their time. Because they said, we've been down this road before, people say what they want, but when we show you what the cost is, then it all falls apart. And they're a business, they're not gonna give you their asset. They're also very clear that if we use their asset, they expect us to more or less rebuild that asset because it's set up for freight rail. It's not set up for passenger rail. It's not double tracked in a lot of places, would require right-of-way in some locations. So if it's ever gonna be a very, I guess, serious conversation we want to have with CSX, there's a lot of things we need to do before we engage them, or they might listen to you, but they're not going to engage in a meaningful conversation about the asset being used for what we may want to use it for. The second thing is they look to the state because they know that state funds would have to be used if it was going to be able to ever be done. And there's certain things on the state side that you have to do. One, it would require, because all passenger rail projects require an act of the legislature before it can be funded, so they have to approve the use of state funds for that. There's a requirement that you pursue federal funds, and the federal government could put up to 50%, it doesn't mean you'll get 50%, maybe it's 30%, maybe it's 40%, but maybe 50%. But that requires a commitment of the local match and the state match before the federal match would come in. And the state law says you can only put up a match to the local match. So at a minimum, there will be a 25% local match for the capital cost plus the cost to operate and maintain the service once it is built. Those commitments have to be memorialized, and in Orlando they were. They came up with the 3 counties or 4 counties in the city.
Yep.
And it was very, very, and that's even with a T&I chairman there. You still needed all of that. So I only bring that up to say, I know it sounds like you got a rail line there, why don't we put commuter rail on it? But there's a ton of things that have to happen locally before you're ever gonna really get much of anything meaningful in a conversation with CSX. The one thing they told me about, there was a change from I guess the president and leadership of CSX over years. And the thing they were kind of saying is they're looking at their assets now as monetary, it has a value.
Right.
And they want to, obviously, as a business, maximize the value of their assets. And so I think you'll find now, compared to maybe when Sunrail went in, they may be looking at their assets as being a lot more valuable. So I throw that out for the new members because it was a lot of discussion in the past, and we haven't had it in a while, but there are a number of things, if we ever want to get serious on it, we need to do before we get CSX, I think, too heavily involved.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Clue?
Yes. Mr. O'Malley, thank you for coming and answering a lot of questions today. This is long overdue for us. We've had a lot of questions about this issue. A number of times in the past, we've talked about why can't we do Sunrail here in Tampa? You know, Sunrail succeeded in Orlando. And I think there's a lot of issues with respect to Sunrail. And you mentioned several times in your presentation about CSX's concern about safety, liability, and compensation. My understanding of Sunrail is that there is an indemnity as well from the state. And is that something that would have to happen here as well? Especially using freight rail for passenger rail, using both, would the state have to step in and indemnify CSX? And then also about compensation, I know we cannot have, I think state and local governments cannot condemn the rail. I think there's some type of exemption for accommodation purposes. What kind of compensation do you think it would cost us here locally to buy the tracks if we had to buy tracks? And then there's the indemnification issue afterward as well. I'm not sure if you can address both those issues. And the third thing is, who do we contact at CSX to talk about these issues?
So, Mr. Klug, so as far as the indemnification, they weren't indemnified, but, well, it was an insurance policy, basically. That had to do with the liability. So it's an umbrella insurance policy that covers, the state is protected by sovereign immunity to a certain extent. CSX doesn't have that same protection. Initially, they looked to get sovereign immunity. That didn't go anywhere. So there is an umbrella insurance policy that covers all the parties involved. So you would need something similar. The framework for that was a heavy lift in the legislature, but that's already in place, so it's not going to be as hard as it was with Sunrail. Capacity is an important issue. Secretary Gwynn mentioned you had a double track in some areas with Sunrail because that adds capacity. Plus, you have to double track because some of the tracks aren't up to standard for passenger rail, but they are up to standard for freight rail. So there is significant investment that needs to take place in the track infrastructure. As far as, your question, what will it cost? And I think that gets to their response that Secretary Gwynn mentioned. What do you want? I mean, were you talking about USF to downtown? Are you talking about their entire Brooksville sub? You're talking about the Brooksville sub and the Clearwater sub? Unless they know something to bounce up against, the conversation doesn't go anywhere. That's why they keep kicking it back, because that's an easy answer for them to give, is just to kick it back. What do you want? And I think they need to know exactly what you are asking for before you ask for how much it's going to cost. Another change that's been from the past, in 2015, they were adamant that they would only sell a subdivision in its entirety. So if you're looking at the Brooksville sub, they would only sell the entire subdivision, and that includes Hernando. That would include the portion in Hernando County. Or if you're looking at the Clearwater sub, they'd want to sell the part in Pinellas. I think they're open to not selling the entire amount. So, but then that also gets back to what do you want exactly? And then even though you might not necessarily need to have all the funding in place, you need to have a reasonable feasibility of getting that funding. So in Orlando, they had a plan for a certain amount of federal funding. They had an advocate at the federal level that they could feel comfortable was going to get that funding. They had a certain amount of state funding that they were relying on. They knew they had strong state support, both within the department, in the legislature, and in the governor's office. And then local, there's a local match too, and they had consensus at the local level. So identifying what you want and then how you're going to pay for that, I think that's a key starting point before you can even engage them. As far as who to contact, as you need to get those things in place first. Don't waste your time just going to them right away, because they'll just kick it back to you. Like I said, it's an easy thing for them to do. I'll give you those names and numbers to call when you're ready, but I think there's a lot of work that needs to take place before you even get there. I don't think you start with them. I think you start within the county first and decide what you want. Get consensus at the local level. Get strong advocates at the state level and at the federal level as well. If you don't have that, then don't waste your time.
Okay.
One last
Councilman,
question. And it's specifically addressing the downtown to the Port City Tampa leg, because if they're not utilizing that system, there's a lot of crossings they have to make, CSS has to maintain. If it's not being utilized, does that factor into their cost of them maintaining that system for how long? I mean, does that even enter into their mindset? Like they're gonna have to keep maintaining these intersections?
No, because the crossings are maintained by the jurisdiction, so in this case, it would be the city. So they're not worried about that. I mean, the track will, you know, they may not use the track and not maintain the track to sufficient standards, or, you know, I've seen track in the Miami area that's accepted track and it's in terrible condition. But you can still park a train on it, you can store rail cars on it. It can still be used, it still has value to them in some way. But again, if you're looking for an easy way out for them, they've dealt with this before elsewhere.
Right.
So I don't mean to, you know, I'm not trying to be difficult, but just trying to give you an honest answer.
No, I appreciate it, because it's definitely one of those conversations we continue to have. So it's good to be able to go in with your eyes wide open. It just seems like such an amazing asset for an urban area. And if it's not being utilized, I mean, I understand the importance of freight and you know, keeping their assets in place. But in an area that's not being utilized, it'd be a shame to not be able to put it to its best use. Thank you.
Okay. And again, Commissioner, my number, you have my number, and I'm available anytime later if any members have any questions, or if staff have questions later. Happy to take those calls.
Sure. I'd just like to ask Johnny if we can begin to work on a local plan so that we can add that to our next month's meeting. It's good that we're 10 years away, but the more we keep talking about it, we don't develop a plan, we still come back, yes, we still come back, and we're inviting someone to give us a third opinion on the same thing over. So I think the first step would be, let's look at how we can develop a local plan and put that on the agenda, and then start talking about it at every meeting. What do we need to do to make this happen? From the state level, federal level, and then local, okay?
Yeah, Commissioner, putting together a rail plan, a comprehensive one, is a very long-term proposition, obviously, but in the immediate term, what we're focusing on, or will be focusing on in 2025, is that Bright Line connectivity study. I think our partners throughout Central Florida are waiting on us to figure that piece out, because getting passengers from Orlando and across Central Florida into Ybor City is one thing. Figuring out how to accommodate the last leg of the journey is another question, and the impacts of not accommodating that correctly would be felt by us on the street network. What we wouldn't want to have is hundreds of passengers getting off the train every day and only being left with Uber and Lyft as an option. So that's going to require a lot of coordination with HART, maybe PSTA, the micro-mobility service providers, of course, and we're in the pre-scoping phase, but we would like to kick that off sometime early 2025, because we know that there's a lot of public interest in that.
Okay. Any other questions? No one? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, then we'll move right along. Okay, Johnny.
Lucky me, I happened to get hoarse right before my presentation. Well, good morning, board members.
Good
Johnny
morning.
Wong, your TPO director. This morning I'll be introducing a topic for discussion and soliciting your thoughts on how best to accommodate small cities on a merged board, if that happens to be the desire of the stakeholders to move that forward. Back in May, are you seeing now? All right, great, thank you. Back in May, the Transportation Management Area Leadership Group, the TMA, met, and we had a very productive conversation at PSTA headquarters. The topic of those conversations was mostly about our respective boards' positions and preferences that had been expressed up until that point. The TMA members at the culmination of that meeting requested staff to come back in September to present some different options about how we can accommodate the smaller cities, basically how they could be represented on the merged board. Leading up to that meeting, which will happen toward the end of this month, each of the 3 staff directors, myself included, will be soliciting feedback from our boards to get your thoughts on some of the options that we've brainstormed. I'll caveat that these are options that we have brainstormed. We're more than open to suggestions from any of you all. You could fall in love with our ideas. You can kick them to the curb and say, please come back when you've thought of something viable. And if you all have suggestions, I'll entertain them at any time. As always, I'll note that we're not expecting to make a final decision today. The purpose of this exercise is to receive your initial reactions, document any preferences, more specifically, any concerns that you have, so that the TMA representatives and myself can report back to that group trying to establish consensus. If this board feels strongly enough about the options that I'm going to present to you during this presentation, if you desire to establish a firm policy position and say, we know that this is what we want, well, that'll be precisely communicated to the TMA on September 20th. But even if you do fall in love with one of those options, it would still be helpful to gather your thoughts about the others in case our preference is not the shared preference of Pinellas and Pasco. Namely, we would want to be able to identify to them why their favorite options are not ours and vice versa. Thus far, your staff have been performing all of the work, exploring this merger concept and leading these conversations, but as Sarah described to you earlier in this meeting, we're hopeful that an independent facilitator can be procured in December, and then we'll kick this off, maybe touching on some of the points that we've already discussed throughout the rest of 2025. And again, we're targeting a decision point in 2026 about whether to move forward or not. To recap what's been discussed so far, I'll first note that Pasco and Pinellas MPOs have agreed in principle to everything that this board has requested. We have collectively discussed the size of the board, whether any regional operators belong on it, the role of transit, and so thus far we've decided 25 voting members is the preference. 2 voting seats, 1 each allocated to regional entities of port and the airport. At the last special meeting that we had, you expressed that you would like to have transit operators represented as non-voting advisors rather than in a voting capacity. Thus, with those positions expressed, Pasco and Pinellas agreed, or we got them to agree with many conversations. That leaves 23 voting seats remaining to apportion. With those 23 available seats, our challenge now is figuring out how to apportion them to ensure that the region's unique communities and their needs are adequately represented, namely the cities. There's some guidelines and requirements that we need to consider before we even have this conversation. Beginning with statutes. There are some relevant statutes that specify how an MPO board needs to be apportioned. Thus far, we have only presented you with options that would satisfy those statutory requirements. The first being that membership is determined on an equitable geographic population ratio basis. Now, that's a long term. It basically means that there needs to be population-based representation of the cities, of the counties, of all the entities. The second is that at least 1/3, because we have 25 seats on this board, 9 of them must be filled by county commissioners. Those 9 can be any combination across Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas. So in sum, the merged board needs to have 9 county commissioners serving on it. And last, due to its population and because it's defined as a central city, the city of Tampa must have voting represented on the merged board. If you look to the right side of this slide, you'll see that in addition to the city of Tampa, the 3 other local governments whose populations comprise 75% of the UZA, urbanized area population, are unincorporated Hillsborough, unincorporated Pinellas, and unincorporated Pasco counties. So taken together, those 4 local governments need to have voting seats on this board. All others are discretionary. Returning to the population ratio basis for apportionment, for just 1 second, if we divide the 23 available seats according to the 2020 census data, 11 of those 23 seats would go to Hillsborough County, or more specifically, entities within Hillsborough County. 4 would go to Pasco, and 8 to Pinellas. With 11 Hillsborough seats to distribute based on population, meaning like we have the 23 seats, Hillsborough is 49% of the regional population, so we get 11. With those 11, how do we divide them across Plant City, Temple Terrace, City of Tampa, and Hillsborough County? That's the question. Hillsborough County, unincorporated Hillsborough County, has 69% of the population, so they would be entitled to 8 seats, which is a challenge because they only have 7 BOCC members. City of Tampa has 20% of the population, which would turn out to be 3 seats. With 3 and 2% of the county population respectively, a population ratio basis would not allow either Plant City or Temple Terrace to have its own designated seat on the merged board. So in addition to that strict population requirement basis, not giving a seat to Plant City or Temple Terrace, the second challenge that I mentioned is that Hillsborough County BOCC only has 7 members, but they would be entitled to 8. So we've got to do something to figure this out. I'm going to skip through that slide because it's not very helpful. All right, so a great way to segue into the topic of how to accommodate the smaller cities is that population. And I know that it's very difficult to be in your position and not have the Excel formulas available to you so that you can see exactly what the population is of all these entities, the county and the cities, not just in Hillsborough, but across Pinellas and Pasco as well. I'll do my best to guide you through this conversation. The options that we have collectively brainstormed to represent the smaller cities are shown on this screen. We have 3, and I'll tell you a little bit of information about each one of them. We've already established that a strict population ratio basis will not work perfectly in Hillsborough County because the population figures won't allow for a meaningful split. Hillsborough County BOCC will have too many. Plant City and Temple Terrace will not have any. Dividing those 23 voting seats, again, would give 11 seats to Hillsborough County entities overall. Dividing those seats by population would mean none for Plant City or Temple Terrace. The first option shown on this screen is to take 3 of the 23 available voting seats and designate those 3 for cities either above or below a certain population threshold. So of the 23 that are on the table, taking 3 of them and saying these 3 belong to either large cities that don't have a designated seat or small cities that don't have a designated seat. This option, in my opinion, and what I'll share with you as a staff recommendation, is that this option clearly benefits either Pinellas or Pasco more than Hillsborough County. The population of our 2 smaller cities is kind of in the middle of all the cities across the region. Pinellas and Pasco have either very large populated cities or very small. In Pinellas, the 3 largest cities are St. Pete, Clearwater, and Largo. They also have others that are above the 50,000 threshold, like Pinellas Park. In Pasco County, they have a number of small cities that are populated below 20,000. They have 6, in fact. Zephyr Hills, Newport Richey, Dade City, St. Antonio, and the list goes on. With us being stuck in the middle, this option is not preferable if the goal is to give a seat to Temple Terrace and Plant City. The second option shown on this screen would be to take 3 of the 23 available voting seats and reserve them for the small cities in each county respectively. So of the 23 that are available, let's take 3 out and say, Hillsborough, you get 1 seat to represent the interests of the small cities. Pasco and Pinellas, you do the same. Effectively, what this would mean is Plant City and Temple Terrace share a voting seat and perhaps alternate the assignment every year or every 2 years. I think that that's a detail that could be figured out. With only 2 smaller cities, logistically, this option works out very well for us. Pinellas, that'll be quite complicated because they have 24 cities to figure out how they rotate representation. In Pasco, they have 6, which isn't a monumental task to figure out, but again, logistically more complicated than our 2. And then finally, the third option would be to create a regional advisory committee that has an open invitation for all cities across the region. So every city could have a seat on this regional committee. That committee would then be entitled 1, 2, or maybe even 3 voting seats to represent the interests of all the small cities on the merged board. I know that that's a lot to share with you in a short amount of time, so if you require any clarification on what I've proposed, please let me know. And I've also got a slide following this that shows you the population of all the cities across the region. Hope that's helpful.
Before we take any questions, Mayor Ross would like to speak, and then we'll open it up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to say, as you folks all know, I'm one of the 3 representatives of this group on the TMA. And really interested to hear the discussion on these, but unlike some of the other policy decisions, I can't speak for my other 2 colleagues on this board, but what I would hope to come out of this one is a little different than what you've done in the past, where we've asked you to, we take a position on the board size, and we did, 25. And we went back to the group, and we were able to make a good justification for the 25, and the other counties agreed. Then we went back with the port and the airport, and we wanted to make them voting members. And we had a little pushback, but we were able to articulate good, grounded reasons for that, and the other 2 counties agreed. This one is a little different in that I would ask you to give us, as people who are going to go and represent this group, give us some input, but I would encourage this group today to just keep it kind of general and give us a little latitude, because in this particular topic, Pinellas really needs to drive the bus here. And I've been talking to them since the very start of this proposed merger thing. I've talked to Pinellas, my counterparts. I'm also in the Suncoast League of Cities. I'm kind of an outlier because I'm the only Hillsborough County person there. The rest of them are all Pinellas County and Pasco. So I've been talking to them a lot about this. Pinellas doesn't have a clue what they're going to do. Yeah, I can tell you there's a lot of dust in the air over this, as you might imagine. There's a lot of cities. I would encourage this group to give us a little. I don't think we need to lead this particular discussion. I think Hillsborough needs to be kind of a listener in this, and to come back to you and say this is what they want to do. Obviously, the 2 people with the biggest skin in the game here, Plant City and Temple Terrace, I don't see a scenario here where we're likely to both retain seats like we have now. And that, that's okay. I'm willing to look at the bigger picture. I get it. But I just hope that we don't take a hard, fast option number 2 is the only thing we're interested in, because we need to kind of listen and see what their mood is on this, I think. And then, of course, it comes back to you. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner Woolster?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And look, even I've come full circle on, I understand why the Port and Aviation Authority should probably be voters on there. So mine's a real quick question, Dr. Wong. Maybe this is something that County Attorney Clark has to answer, but when it comes to voter representation of the cities under the federal law, well, 6 of the 7 county commissioners represent the city of Tampa. So what specifically does that law require? Does it simply say that it's an elected official that must represent that area? Or does it specifically say that it has to be an elected official from the municipality?
So the provision, that you're referencing, and it reads differently in state and federal law. Obviously, federal controls it in its way. I think the state statute's trying to replicate what the federal law says. But the federal law states that designation of MPOs have to be made between the governor and then units of general purpose local government that represent at least 75% of the existing population of the urbanized area, but specifically states to include the largest incorporated city based on population according to the Census Bureau. The state turns around and calls that, however, the unit of general purpose local government that represents the central city or cities within the MPO must be a party to such an agreement. So state says central city or cities, plural for some reason, and what I think that's trying to capture is at the federal level, it just says the largest city has to be part of the MPO agreement. What that means for designation purposes is that once, and we did this relatively recently with the redesignation of this MPO, that it ultimately has to be, if there's any changes, has to be agreed upon between the BOCC, then it goes to City Council. I believe it also goes to Temple Terrace and Plant City if there's going to be a redesignation. And then finally, and this happened, I think, just in the last couple of months, the governor signs it, and then it's complete.
Well, it goes to them just because that's the way our charter's written, but has it ever been clearly said? I mean, I represent 100% of the city of Tampa. Commissioner Kemp does. Commissioner Cepeda represents 100% of the city of Tampa. So does it specifically say that it has to be the municipality? Because that's not what I just heard.
Sure. To my understanding, the way this has always been applied is to include the representative local government of the largest cities, of the largest municipality. I could confirm how other MPOs have read that, but I've never seen any conflict in regards to that part.
Okay. Just curious for clarification.
Okay, Commissioner Coyne.
So, I think that I don't think that these options are going about it correctly. I don't think we should throw all the small cities into a pot. I think we should be concerned about making sure that 11 of the seats are Hillsborough County seats, and that within Hillsborough, we'll figure out who's going to be our 11, and let Pinellas figure out how to handle their small cities, and let Pasco figure out how to handle theirs. If we have 11 seats, we have the Expressway Authority, we have our two small cities, we have the City of Tampa, and we have the Board of County Commissioners. Everybody will have plenty of options under that, and the school board. Everybody has plenty of options under that scenario. I don't really think all 7 county commissioners are going to want to serve on this. I think if you had 5, which is what we have now, there'd still be room for 3 from the City of Tampa, and there'd be 3 seats left to divide between the Expressway Authority, the school board, and the 2 small cities. I think we should let Pinellas and Pasco figure out how to apportion their seats, and we should figure out how to apportion ours. And however they want to do it, they can do it, as long as the total ends up fitting in with whatever the legal requirement is.
Well stated. Thank you, Mayor Kilter.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think you're right on point there. If we we don't want to be dictated to about how we handle our seats, and I don't think they want to have that same thing. I think to have some flexibility, I take that loud and clear, Mayor Ross. I think that's fair. But I think with the 11 seats, I think we've got 5 BOCC now. We got 3 the City of Tampa, Plant City, Temple Terrace, and that leaves one more open. And I think there is room for both cities, and I can make a strong argument for both. For Plant City, for example, it's only 40,000. That's maybe the nuts and the bolts of it, but more qualitatively, the greater eastern Hillsborough County is a lot more people than that, okay? And Plant City now is more and more increasingly important as it relates to logistics and freight. And it's not just on the Hillsborough County side of County Line Road. Look at everything that's happening on the Polk County side, and they're using that same transportation networks and corridors that we are. So it's a bigger conversation than just the 40,000 people in Plant City. We need to have a seat at the table because of all those reasons, and there's plenty of room for that to happen.
Okay. Commissioner Kemp?
Well, I was going to go right where Commissioner Cohen just went, because I just don't see any reason that the larger group should dictate each county. Each county is extremely different, which is one of the reasons I have issues with this whole merger idea in the first place. In Pinellas County, for instance, their unincorporated area is 250,000 people. In Hillsborough, it's over 1 million. It's 1.1 million. So why should we be forcing our model? And they have like, what, 26, 29 jurisdictions on that. Then you have Pasco, which has not one major city at all, unlike Pinellas and Hillsborough, but instead it has a variety of cities, the largest, I think, being around 40,000, with Zephyr Hills and Newport Richey, and then a bunch of other ones. I mean, for us to tell any of the other groups, they should just work it out. We have our proportion, and then we work it out. I'll say this, there are, in unincorporated, 1.1 million people, and by the way, we all represent the countywide county commissioners. I also represent 100% of Temple Terrace, as well as Tampa, as well as Plant City. So, I mean, making some distinction, as I find too often, kind of like punishing Tampa or making something about Tampa rather than any of the other cities, I find, I don't understand the point in that from elected point. But I would say, whether 7 county commissioners want to serve on the TPO or not, they should be. I think they have an obligation to, honestly. And I don't think that we should be, but we do have enough to do the county commissioners, the elected representatives, which I feel very strongly about, and they're elected for the reason of embedding themselves into this, and they deal with it all the time. I just think you have much more expertise and knowledge to follow this, and you're in contact with the constituency and accountable. So I think it's very important on this basis to have your county commissioners, your city councilors, your elected representatives of these bodies serving, rather than unelected, that have very special interests. So I'll just put that forward. I really think that that's important when you're considering too, but I don't think we should be telling Pinellas. Pinellas should be telling us. Pasco should be, I mean, all 3 of them are so different that it doesn't make any sense to say a one-fits-all model, and we will designate this for each of, I just don't think that's our job.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Clendenin.
Yeah, it's interesting, having served on this for now a little over a year. I came into it with a different set of expectations and mindset, and then recently we had a vote that completely shifted my bedrock of thought about serving on a consensus board that was looking out after the best interests of the citizens of Hillsborough County, and specifically the jurisdiction that I represent, the city of Tampa. I found that a vote that was very disrespectful for the city of Tampa, and I find that a lot of this discussion is also not respectful of the city of Tampa. Clearly, the statute says that the city of Tampa weighs heavily on this, and that's part of why I said I don't think we need to invest a lot of money into this study. On the path that we're going, if the city of Tampa has, for lack of a better, veto authority over this, I can't imagine that the city of Tampa is going to approve this merger based on this board's decisions and how they treat the priorities of the city of Tampa. And quite honestly, Commissioner Wastel, you have members of the city of Tampa that represent the city of Tampa here on the council. So while I appreciate your representation, I would defer to that lowest form of government, and that is the city government. We have to be more respectful of the biggest city in the urban area. As we are urban planning and planning transportation city, the city of Tampa is an extremely important element of that. I mean, both the airport and the port authority are substantially within the city of Tampa. The expressway operates as an important element in the city of Tampa. So these are all parts of the all roads lead into Tampa, and now in St. Petersburg to a second degree. So as we're making these decisions, I mean, I'm sorry, but unless the city of Tampa is better represented by the people that sit on this board, I don't see this moving forward. This is 180 degrees off of where I was just a couple of months ago. But one particular vote was a big slap in the face, and I haven't said it publicly, and loudly, but I really felt that it was a real good indication of how we manage the people's interest as we sit here at this table. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Cohen?
I would just bring it back, Councilman Clendenin, though, to the fact that if Hillsborough gets 11 seats and lets the others decide how to apportion, we can decide in here. You're absolutely right. You may very well decide, City of Tampa may decide it wants no part of this, but the City of Tampa will do best, I believe, if Hillsborough protects its 11 votes, rather than starting to dilute ourselves by carving out votes for small cities that include Tarpon Springs and Gulfport and North Reddington Beach. So I just want to bring it back to that for this discussion, I think we should try to come to a consensus that our position is we just like to be responsible for our own 11 votes and let them decide how to handle how they're going to divide theirs up.
I don't disagree. It just concerns me that a lot of that discussion is, we're talking about a lot of these, there's 29, 32 small cities, but we're not really talking about the biggest city in the area. So that's part of my concern.
Okay, Mayor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues, for the input. I think I hear everybody loud and clear, but I just want to remind everybody, and believe me, as one of your 3 negotiators at the TMA, I'm acutely aware of the desires of the city of Tampa and the likelihood that they will vote this down if they don't feel like they're getting an adequate piece of the pie. So I get it, and when I'm there wearing my Hillsborough TPO hat, I'm not there wearing my Temple Terrace mayor hat. So I'm there looking at it. We may come back here and tussle over your representation, but when I'm there, I'm looking out for Hillsborough County, and that includes Tampa. But as we go through this process, I just want to remind everybody the backdrop to this, right? The Florida legislature has mandated that we consider this. Now, I don't see how any of us in this room could possibly know whether we're going to ultimately be in favor of or against until we see what the final product looks like. How could we know? I don't know where I will fall on it because I don't know what the final product will look like. But if we get to a point where we decide that this is not a good idea, or we don't have enough votes in the Tri-County area, it seems to me that we're going to have some very specific and rational and logical reasons why this is untenable. And if it becomes a turf war about, well, we're not going to vote for it because, we all hate Largo or whatever it is, right? Then the legislature, I don't think, will buy that, and I think they will impose this on us under their terms instead of ours. And we don't hate Largo. No, I have many friends in Largo. So I just think that whether this goes forward, it can go forward under our terms. I say all our terms, the Tri-County area, or it can go forward under the state of Florida's terms. Or perhaps the end result will be we persuade the state of Florida that this is not a great idea. It looked okay at the beginning, but there are some very concrete reasons why this is untenable. But I think if we go back to the state of Florida and say, no, we don't want to do it, just because Temple Terrace doesn't want to lose their seat or Tampa wants to gain, whatever. I think if it becomes perceived as a turf war, they'll force us into it, and it'll be under their terms, and it'll just be the county commissioners, and that'll be it, or whatever they have to do to comply with the law. But, we'll have no say. And so I'm just say that to please encourage everybody to at least keep an open mind. I don't know if I'm in favor of this proposed merger. My opinion changes on this after every meeting. But I will carry forward the mandate that you guys gave me, and that is to go to the TMA and talk on behalf of Hillsborough County. But please keep an open mind, and I can't tell you what to do, but I am not going out of my community and talking way out in favor of it or way out and against it, because I don't know what this is gonna look like. And so, you know, so let's please keep an open mind.
Okay, Commissioner Kemp.
I'd just like to point for the record that this is federal law that we're dealing with that sets up the MPOs, not the state law. And just continually bring up that we're under some kind of threat that we must do this and must comply with whatever is designated about this, I think is very much misinformation and not actually accurate. We are doing this voluntarily and considering it, and if the state is going to somehow punish us, as they've already done with the Supreme Court decision to take our funding that the citizens of Hillsborough County voted for, and with other decisions that have been made, they're already punishing us anyway. So it doesn't really, play a significant role in terms of that. So I just really, I keep hearing the state's going to do this, the state's going to do that. So you better do it first and do it voluntarily and smile when you do it, which is just, to me, doesn't really make sense and sounds more like a threat, which I don't see how to take it any other way, and less like a decision that we would make, because we would think actually it would be an improvement in some way for the region, which I've many times haven't thought that it's an improvement for Hillsborough County. So I'll just, I think that, and I don't think it's really a benefit as well for Pinellas or Pasco. But that being said, we're not under a mandate by the state, and if the state can really do that, then I don't see why they wouldn't have already done that.
Why did we start this discussion then? We are under a mandate.
Absolutely we are. It was passed in Florida law 2 years ago during state session, and I completely agree with all of this conversation, Mayor Ross, that we want to control our own destiny, and you, Commissioner Kemp and Councilman Member Hurtak, have done a great job of representing our interests at the TMA. At the same time, if we withdraw from this conversation, Pinellas and Pasco are going to go and they're going to do it for us. And that this is not something, so we can either be part of the conversation, or we can let our legislative leaders in Tallahassee, with the direction of Pinellas and Pasco, direct this. I mean, that's plain as day. And so I think that I completely agree with the conversation today. And I think that, Mayor Ross, to your point, one of my thoughts of coming into this on this unincorporated areas in these small cities is that Pinellas has the problem, not us. And I completely agree with Commissioner Cohen's statement of dividing up those 11 seats that way. However, for us to say that Tallahassee, that we are not under a state mandate and that Tallahassee has no say in this is just false.
Well, for the record, I just like to, our attorney, Secretary Gwen, isn't it true that Tampa can make a decision on this? I mean.
Okay, Secretary, we're going to allow you to answer, and then we're going to stick to the conversation we're trying to get direction to Johnny. Go ahead. Okay.
So, and I'm not a lawyer, so if the lawyer hears me say something wrong, my understanding is you need to have 75%, the elected bodies, 75%, and the largest city. But if you look at it, somebody could say, well, then the city of Tampa can threaten not to approve it. So can Pasco County, so can Pinellas County, so can Hillsborough County. I mean, all four have to somehow come together to work together to make it work. But I would imagine that if you got into a gray area, it would probably be the courts who get involved. I don't know, because I think it is still a gray area. It's not something that happens all the time. And I've heard people say different things. So, but nobody has, it's not, I keep hearing somebody can threaten to veto it. Well, there's 4 vetoes out there, and hopefully none of them get used. But we support it because we see the benefits of it, but we also understand that it's not a decision we would make as a DOT for sure.
Johnny, hearing all of the comments, which were excellent discussion. Oh, okay.
Yes, board members, I think that Secretary Gwynn stated it correctly. There is, and I think the difficulty from the context of the state forcing the issue is that the state statute on this is really a reflection of federal law. That's the challenge. The law, both federally and in terms of state law, really envision cooperation and collaboration between the member governments. But Secretary Gwynn stated it correctly, which is that the required entities to be involved in this sort of a merger are the 3 county BOCCs and the largest city of Tampa. I remember some time ago when this was being discussed, I think there's some discussion as to whether or not does the largest city, since there are 3 existing MPOs potentially merging into one, do the largest cities of the other 2 counties have to have some sort of say as well, because those existing MPOs would be merged. So therefore does St. Pete, and honestly, I'm not sure what the largest city in Pasco County is, but I think in the end, there's no, for Hillsborough's purposes, I don't think that part matters, because whether it's Hillsborough as a single county or the Tampa Bay TMA in total, Tampa is the largest city. So to sum it up, I probably already said too much, but to sum up, I believe Secretary Gwynn stated it correctly.
Okay. Commissioner Coyne.
I would just say that while it's probably clear that the Board of County Commissioners of the 3 counties makes the decision for the county, I'm not so sure whether it would be the mayor alone or the mayor plus the city council that would make the decision for the city of Tampa. There might even be question about who can bind the city. I'm not so sure that's clear. So this may be complicated on a lot of different levels. But again, for today's purpose, for today's conversation, it does sound like there's some consensus in the room that we should try and simply preserve our 11 seats as the starting point of this discussion, and let the others decide how to handle theirs.
Yes.
Now might be a great time to recognize all of you and honestly give some kudos for working through an incredibly complicated issue. I don't know if we've shared this with you all, but there's only one other example nationwide of 2 MPOs merging, and that's in a small, relatively homogeneous population in Texas. So we've been tasked with essentially figuring this out to serve as an example for other MPOs across the nation. Whatever happens, I think that this will be documented and shared with partner agencies to say, learn from their process.
Okay, Secretary Gwynn.
I appreciate that point, Johnny. One thing I would note is Florida has 27 MPOs. No other state has nearly. Most states, their MPOs cover urban areas. They don't cover county by county. Somehow it evolved that way in Florida. Maybe we grew later and a lot, but I think you'll find most places don't have to merge because they were formed as an MPO. I think Greg will tell you when he came from the Baltimore area, they had multi-states in the same MPO. And so we created something that's not the norm. And kind of what we're doing is we're kind of trying to undo what was done by creating 3 MPOs in the same urban area. So you're right in the fact that it's only been done once, but I don't think there's hardly any, even California I don't think has anywhere near 27. Most states have very few MPOs compared to what we have in Florida.
Board Member Slater.
Yes, thank you. Just to kind of add to that, I know just it is about where you started, not necessarily how they come together. You know, this is the 7th TPO that I've worked with over the course of my 30 years. This is the only one I've ever worked with that was one county. All the others were multiple counties. Baltimore, our MPO is 6 counties in the Baltimore City. The DC MPO is Maryland, Virginia, the District of Columbia, you know, so all those counties involved. It's where they started. So it's about, okay, where's your travel shed? Where are the people living? Where are they commuting? Where are they driving to build the best transportation system for them? It's just about where we started and the fact that it's complicated to kind of bring those entities together. But this is the only one that I've ever worked with that has been, is one county. All the others were multiple counties.
I appreciate that. My goal was just to basically give credit where credit's due, and maybe the title of the paper is retrofitting an MPO. But if we could just go back to this slide for a second. So what I'm hearing from the majority of members around the table is that our preference is to preserve the 11 seats. We'll figure out how to divide them and give the same opportunity to Pasco and Pinellas. And whatever they come up with, we'll agree in principle to those terms.
Yes.
Just to be devil's advocate, do we want to take a shot at maybe ranking the 3 options that are on the table just to solicit a reaction from Pinellas and Pasco if the conversation goes in that direction? No? I'm hearing no.
Mayor Ross?
Dr. Long, I would hope that you don't do that and just give us the flexibility when we all get there. And so I think this will all work out. I really do, because I think if the 3 of us just kind of take a back seat in this discussion, let Pinellas drive the bus, and as long as whatever they come up with, if Pasco agrees to it and it doesn't impact our flexibility, we're good. I don't think we even need to say we're going to let you do what you want to do and we're going to do what let's just see where they go. And as long as where they go doesn't have a negative impact on our 11 seats, let them go there. Right? So this isn't one where I think Hillsborough needs to lead the charge. We just sit.
Yes.
Now, if it starts trespassing on your ability to have your seat or mine or the county commission to Tampa, you know, we're always looking at, I know you don't believe it, but we are looking out for Tampa, right? So.
All right, well, thank you for that feedback. So that's what we'll report to the TMA at the end of this month. If there are any positions that we need to report back to you, either myself or the 3 TMA members will do that at a future meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you, Johnny. Then we're going to go and approve the minutes. So we have a motion to approve the minutes. A second. Have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
That
Madam
motion
Chair,
is carried.
may I ask you just a clarification, not on the last item, but I believe that the presentation that Johnny just gave was an action item. Is there a recommended board motion you wanted them to do, or?
Actually, yeah, that would be great.
I'll make a motion that we simply commit to autonomy over our 11 seats.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to the autonomy of our 11 seats. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposers? That motion is carried. We have any old business? Just wait one minute. Oh, new business? We adjourn. Thank you so much. 11:50.